guys, welcome back to another episode of Pages of Chelsea. I am your girl Chelsea, and today we are continuing with Vlogmas. We're on day 8, which means today is December the 8th. So let's pull out of our handy dandy bag here and see which book we're going to talk about today. Are you ready? Open, and we're talking about ooh, come closer so you guys can see. My handwriting is atrocious, but Filthy Rich Vampire, second Rite. This is a recent read. Let's talk about it. Hi guys, let's go ahead and get started on our book today. Filthy Rich Vampire, the second Rite. This book is a second book in a trilogy. There's Filthy Rich Vampire, Filthy Rich Vampire Second Rite, and Filthy Rich Vampire Three Queens. And they're all in my handy dandy bag, so maybe we'll touch on one of those before the end of this season. We've already touched on 2 books from one series before, so who knows. Just a brief synopsis. A human stumbles across vampire. They fall in love. She is very oblivious to the fact that anything supernatural exists. Vampires, werewolves, witches, demons, like anything supernatural that you could think of. She's that the human world, us, we're very oblivious to that they exist. And so with them falling in love, they have to go and prove their love and prove that she is fit to marry a vampire, because it's not something that happens all the time. So they go through trials and tribulations. They go through in-laws, his parents, his siblings, her moms. Like, there's a whole messed up family dynamic that we have to get through. There's also happens to be, and this is not spoiling anything, maybe a little bit, but the series is taking place during the, I'm going to describe it as, because I can't remember the exact terminology, the mating season for vampires. So this is where they're trying to match vampires with their perfect mate to produce more vampires, because you can be turned into a vampire like the usual way, and drinking and the swapping of all of that stuff, but they can also be born through everything else is born through adult activities. So this is their time, and so because this is the mating match season, they're having to go through all of the things that he would have to go through if he found a mate through this process. So that's fun to watch. I like this series because I call it Twilight if Twilight was adults. So it's very much sexy older vampire meets young girl. And I know you're like, what? And I'm like, if you watch fantasy or read fantasy, there's always an age gap. And this is the only time that age gaps are okay for me. Because I can't fault this person for being around as long as they have, or aging or whatever, and I can't fault that. It's not a normal thing. I know that probably doesn't make sense, but that's how my brain works. So he's been around for like 1,000, 1,500 years, some 2,000, somewhere in there, like born 1,000 to 1,500 years ago. So he's seen a lot. So they go through that. We find out that there is a possibility in the second book that she may not be fully human. And so we explore that whole dynamic of, is she human or is she not human? Does that change things? Does that not change things? But it's very sexy. There are balls. There are parties. There are tests. And this kind of tickles my fancy because currently in 2024, I was very much into billionaires. And it's just something about, and I'm not rich, but I'm not poor. but I'm not rich. So something about an unlimited funds being used to woo a woman that just makes me warm and tingly. Yeah, so he has unlimited funds because he's been around for 1,500 years. And I feel like if you've been around for 1,500 years and you don't got your money right, then you're just really bad with money. You know what I mean? Like, there's some things you can do. You can bury some treasure and stocks, get the little bond papers. Like, there's, you know what I mean? So, you know, I will say that there is some family discord in this. There is definitely some found family in this. There's definitely there's a lot going on in this story, and I like stories that have the main story, but I like how other stories are underneath it that eventually weave into like this beautiful picture. Excuse me, guys. It is early. Goodness gracious. I so apologize. I wanted to make sure I get this out for you, seeing how it is Sunday. I wanted to make sure, because Sunday is family day, so I'm trying to make sure I get this done before my daughter wakes up, before I get out the house. So, excuse me. But it's just a fun story. It's a fun love story with a guy who has money and can woo her. And it also lends to the fact that money does not buy happiness. And just because you have money doesn't mean that what you can buy is what she needs. So I always think that's a fun thing for people to learn who have money, and also for someone who's considers themselves like an expert in people, not vampires or humans, just in people. And so he tries to give her some gifts and she's like, bro, that's too much. I don't need all of that. So it's fun. This is definitely a series that I would love to be turned into a TV show, just with the extravagance of it. And they travel from the US to Europe, and they go all over, in Paris and Italy and Greece and and it's very, the scenery is very beautiful, whimsical, very romantic, very bustling city. This is not a small town romance. This is a worldwide romance. So I would recommend for you to read this series. And the cover, as you can see, is gorgeous. The cover for this whole universe is beautiful. From Filthy Rich Vampires, that series, to Filthy Rich Fae, it's a very beautiful cover. And that's what actually drew me in. I was walking around Target in the book section, because if you know, you know, Target is most women's happy place, and it is mine. And I stopped and I was like, what is this book? I do not know what it's about. I have to pick it up and see if it's something I'm interested in. And I was like, first of all, it had vampires on the front. We didn't already talk about this, y'all. We have already talked about my love for vampires, okay? So that was already it. But when I said, oh, it's a romance vampire story, an adult romance vampire, because let me say this too. The FMC, the main female character, is an adult. She's not a teenager, not 16, not 17, not 18. Like, she's an adult. She's like 22, I want to say. 21, 22. Definitely old enough to drink. So I'm going to say like 21 or 22. So that was another thing that made this whole thing, oh, not okay, but like, it was nice to read about adults and vampires and not them be YA, I would say, or not them be written for children. You know, this is very much written for adults. It has adult conflicts. And you know what? It has conflicts that I feel like not everybody, but anybody can go through when they first start dating someone or meet a person. You have to deal with their families and their friends being overprotective, and sometimes family secrets coming out. So it's just a really good book. It's a fun book for adults. If you are not into fantasy, but would like to dip your toe into fantasy, this is what I would recommend, because it has just enough of that magical touch, a little magical dusting, that would be a nice entry, and I've actually recommended this to a friend who said she would never read fantasy, but we're gonna see how that go. So yes, so I recommend you read this book. I appreciate you guys rocking with me for 8 days. We're not even at the halfway point, so we have a lot more to go. Don't forget to follow me on Instagram and in here, subscribe here, and Instagram. And then my TikTok is going through a username update, so just follow me on Instagram right now until I get TikTok together. But I appreciate you rocking with me, and if you're seeing this after Christmas, keep watching. There's so many more videos after this, and stay tuned for monthly TBRs and monthly wrap-ups. I appreciate you. You guys have a good Sunday. Bye.